Azusa confidently walks toward her office building. As she makes her way inside, several employees glance at her, recognizing her as someone whose proposals and materials often win awards. At the entrance gate, she scans her ID, but the gate doesn't budge when she tries to walk through. Looking down, she realizes it isn't her ID that she scanned, but a business card for plumbing services. Meanwhile, in the publicity department, Kosuke is stressing over the pile of work waiting to be completed when Azusa enters and heads to her desk. Several coworkers greet her as others continue filing into the office. Once the greetings die down, everyone quickly gets to work. Minori approaches Azusa with a concern since one of the influencers they had contacted for a promotion is no longer available. She asks if Azusa has a solution. Azusa coldly reminds Minori that it's her responsibility to handle that issue, and that she should have come prepared with a proposal rather than asking for ideas. Still, Azusa suggests that if the influencer can't participate, they could use a stand-in since several other talents are available for the project. She then walks over to Kosuke, handing him the documents she corrected on his behalf so he can forward them to the planning department. Noticing his messy desk, she scolds him, prompting Kosuke to hurriedly clean up. Azusa is soon called over by their boss, E.G. As she heads his way, two coworkers gush about how reliable she is, though Kosuke mutters that Azusa is actually quite scary. The girls reluctantly agree, admitting she could stand to be nicer. When Azusa reaches Eiji, he informs her about a new hire who will be joining the department. He wants her to train him. A flicker of uncertainty passes through Azusa's eyes, but Eiji reassures her that the newcomer is talented and should adapt quickly. He adds that it would benefit the company if someone as accomplished as Azusa trained him. Azusa smiles at the compliment and accepts the task, though inwardly she laments the situation. She has worked hard to cultivate an aloof and distant image, specifically to avoid being invited to after-work drinking sessions. Unfortunately, Eiji seems oblivious to this and continues to believe she gets along well with everyone. The thought makes her even gloomier, though she resolves to remain professional. Before she can dwell on it further, an energetic voice greets the department. Turning, Azusa sees the new hire, Yu, greet Eiji. Catching her watching him, Yu apologizes for interrupting their conversation. Eiji introduces them, prompting Yu to politely introduce himself to Azusa. Azusa coldly greets Yu back, though inwardly she can't help but gush over how boyish and charming he seems. Still, she refuses to show her emotions, knowing Eiji is entrusting her with the responsibility of teaching Yu everything she knows. Gazing at him, she quietly swears to herself that she'll do her best to train him, despite her poor communication skills. Azusa brings Yu to the merchandising room and explains that the company originally started as a game developer, but has since expanded into other industries such as apparel, real estate, and more. She emphasizes that because the company covers such a wide range of businesses, their department is constantly handling multiple projects at once. She then quickly walks him through the different parts of the building, their desks, the kitchen, the copy machine, the nearest bathroom, and even the free snack area. Feeling accomplished, she believes she's managed to show him everything important. They dive straight into work, but soon Yu hesitantly calls for her attention, embarrassed that he doesn't know what his tasks are for the day. Azusa realizes she got carried away with the tour and completely forgot to explain his actual duties. Regaining her composure, she firmly tells him that he'll be joining her in a business meeting and that for now, his role is to shadow her and observe. Before they leave, she insists they practice exchanging business cards, as it's an essential part of professional etiquette. Azusa attempts to demonstrate, but in trying to force open her card holder, she accidentally spills its entire contents across the floor. Flustered by her own clumsiness, she freezes as Yu quickly gathers the scattered cards and hands them back to her politely. As planned, Azusa and Yu greet their guests at the company entrance and escort them to the meeting room. She asks if it's alright for Yu to join, and he introduces himself smoothly, offering his business card just as she had shown him earlier. She begins her presentation. Outwardly, it appears flawless, but inside she's rattled by Yu's attentive gaze, which makes her even more self-conscious. The meeting proves to be a tough one for her, as she spends the entire time battling her nerves. After the meeting, Yu compliments Azusa on how professional she looked, though she feels mentally exhausted. She realizes it's almost lunchtime and wonders if it's proper for her, as the senior, to invite him out. She begins to smile to herself while thinking of a nice restaurant they could go to. Yu notices the smile but is startled when her expression suddenly shifts into panic. In her inner monologue, Azusa frets about whether inviting him to lunch would be considered harassment. She also worries about appearing cold or unapproachable if she doesn't invite him. Her anxiety spirals further as she worries about what kind of small talk she could manage during the meal. Yu, noticing her troubled look, doesn't comment on it. Flustered, Azusa abruptly announces that she has another meeting and tells him to go ahead with his lunch without her. She hurries off, trying to hide the redness of her face. Once she's put enough distance between them, she slides down against the wall and sighs, wondering how she's supposed to mentor him when her personality makes even simple interactions so difficult. By the end of the day, Yu approaches her to say he's heading home. Azusa acknowledges it, then silently scolds herself for sounding so curt. Before leaving, Yu thanks her for looking out for him, admitting he had been very nervous about his first day. Azusa tells him it's normal for newcomers to make mistakes and reassures him that he can always rely on her. She offers him a few more words of praise before he leaves. As he exits, his other coworkers also stop to chat with him about his first day. That evening, as Azusa walks the dark streets home, she feels guilty. She realizes she spent more time worrying about her own image than focusing on Yu's feelings. She resolves that tomorrow she'll be more attentive and straightforward with him. The next day, Yu is chatting casually with coworkers when Azusa appears, coldly telling them to move out of her way. They immediately make room for her to pass. Azusa sits at her desk, inwardly proud of herself for greeting everyone normally, completely unaware that she actually came across as intimidating. Later, she assigns Yu to draft a proposal for a manga studio, handing him samples of her own past work for reference. As Yu dives into the task, Azusa vows that today will be the day she finally invites him to lunch. When Yu later asks her to review his work, she points out several mistakes and tells him to revise those sections. Before he can get started, she adds firmly that he should make the revisions after lunch. Azusa decides this is the perfect opportunity to finally invite Yu to lunch. When she turns to look for him, she's confused by his absence, only to spot him returning to his desk with a cup of instant noodles. She immediately scolds him for eating something so unhealthy, but Yu explains that he's on a budget. Azusa chooses not to argue further and turns away, feeling guilty that she missed her timing and may have sounded too harsh, especially since she didn't know about his financial situation. Yu, however, notices the dejected look on her face. At a diner, Azusa eats her own lunch while feeling inadequate as a mentor. She recalls how her own mentor once brought her to the same restaurant, sharing words of wisdom and encouragement over a meal. The memory only deepens her sense of failure. Her phone ringing pulls her out of her thoughts. She quickly finishes her food before calling Ritsu back. On her walk to the office, she discusses the tasks still left to handle. Ritsu thanks her, then advises her to practice making small talk more often. He also brings up the collaboration cafe they worked on previously, feeling confident that the cafe will reach out with another project soon. Azusa hums in agreement, noting that such a project would be good training for Yu. Ritsu is amused to learn that Azusa now has a mentee. He teases her to go easy on the rookie, knowing full well that her communication skills aren't her strong suit. When Azusa mentally argues that she did fine today, Ritsu bluntly tells her that her usual short replies don't count as actual conversation. Watching from his office, he observes Yu and warns Azusa that younger employees these days won't hesitate to switch jobs if they feel unsupported. Azusa immediately worries that Yu might leave because of her poor mentoring. Ritsu suggests she try reading a self-help book, but Azusa frowns at the idea, insisting she doesn't need someone else's success story to tell her how to improve. With that, she ends the call and returns to the office. As the sun sets, the publicity department wraps up for the day. Azusa finishes her own tasks and heads home, stopping by a bookstore to pick up several self-help titles about communication and mentorship. Back in her apartment, she realizes she forgot to buy dinner. Opening the fridge, she finds nothing and settles for cup noodles. She scolds herself for eating the same thing she had chastised Yu about, though consoles herself that at least she's pairing it with vegetable juice. Diving into the books, she discovers the first rule of being a successful boss is to greet everyone with energy and a smile. Remembering her cold morning greeting, she realizes she had done the exact opposite. To practice, Azusa grabs a small mirror and begins testing out her smile and greetings. However, her own reflection looks so stiff and unsettling that she quickly gives up, deciding to move on to the next piece of advice. The book suggests that instead of being strict, she should nurture her subordinate with praise. The advice confuses her since she knows she'll eventually have to correct Yu's mistakes. Leaning back on the couch, she begins to wonder if she's really cut out to be a mentor at all. Her thoughts are interrupted when she remembers the cup noodles she left sitting out. Checking on them, she finds they're overcooked. Saddened, she breaks her chopsticks and digs in. The next morning, Azusa wakes up and realizes she overslept. Panicked, she hurries to get ready, worrying about the impression it would make on Yu if she were late. Fortunately, she manages to speed through her routine and arrives at the office perfectly composed. There she spots Yu, who greets her warmly. Azusa prepares to return the greeting, but freezes when she overhears Akemi and Minori whispering about her. They say she's strict and scary, and that the only reason she gets away with her lack of social skills is because she's so good at her job. The words sting and Azusa drops her tablet, revealing sticky notes filled with reminders about communication. Yu quickly gathers them up and carefully hands the tablet back to her. As Azusa takes it, Yu catches a glimpse of the hurt expression she can't quite hide. She quickly composes herself and briskly tells him they should start their day. But before she can leave, Yu walks towards the two gossiping coworkers. With an easy expression, he tells them how lucky he feels to be under Azusa's guidance, because he's already seen her kind side. Akemi and Minori are startled, realizing Azusa overheard their gossip. Yu then returns to Azusa's side and apologizes for overstepping. Azusa stubbornly turns away, declaring that she isn't going to thank him, before quietly whispering a soft thank you. As they walk toward their department, Azusa awkwardly tries to ask if he wants to have lunch together. Yu, missing the hint, simply replies that he'll have noodles again, though this time with a veggie stick to make it healthy. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes every week.